Our names are Aaron and Brooklyn, and we will be presenting on Line 5 pipeline. So, to start, I just want to highlight the key parts of this issue. The who in this environmental issue is a company called Enbridge Incorporate. They're a Canadian oil company with a bit of a questionable safety record and history. Enbridge was the company responsible for the Line 6B oil spill in the Kalamazoo River in 2010, the second largest inland oil spill in American history. What Enbridge is responsible for here is a massive pipeline over 1,000 kilometers long that pumps nearly 90 million liters of oil and gas per day. The crude oil is transported from Alberta to Sarnia, Ontario. When this issue takes place dates back to the 50s, when the pipeline was first installed. Despite its 50-year lifespan, it is still running today, 72 years later. This pipeline, as I mentioned, transports oil from Alberta to Sarnia. As shown on this map here, it travels from Superior, Wisconsin, down through the Straits of Mackinac, Michigan, through to Sarnia. The main issue with this pipeline lies in the Straits of Mackinac, where there is a 7.4-kilometer stretch of pipe lying on the lakebed. For the Anishinaabe people in Bay Mills Indian Reserve, life began at Michilimackinac, or what we now know as the Straits of Mackinac. This is an extremely sacred place with cultural, historic, and archaeological importance. This place is also important to many more than human beings as well. Potowski 2021 explains that it is, quote, one of the most ecologically unique and fragile confluences of water in the world, end quote. But why is this a problem? According to Enbridge's website, Line 5 has never leaked in all its lifetime. However, other sources show that this pipeline has already leaked more than 4.5 million liters of oil. It has spilled at least 30 times. The next issue with Line 5 is the potential for anchor hits. In the last 6 years, this pipeline has been struck by 2 anchors, one of which dented the pipeline and the other pulled it 3 meters off kilter. Finally, there is a serious risk of rupture due to this line's age. An oil spill would be disastrous for the surrounding environment, both land and water, as more than 1,100 kilometers of shoreline is at risk of being polluted. This image shows a simulation of a potential oil spill from Line 5 pipeline at the Straits of Mackinac. The potential impacts of a rupture. There is a plethora of potential impacts from this pipeline rupturing. For the sake of time, I have split it into 3 categories. Economically, an oil spill in this region would cost between 1.3 and 5.6 billion US dollars. This would be in damage to agriculture, tourism, and other industries, and does not even include the cost of cleanup. More importantly, if you ask me, are the environmental impacts of an oil spill. A serious rupture could severely impact shorelines and ecosystems. As David Schwab, a scientist at University of Michigan, explains, quote, if you were to pick the worst possible place for an oil spill in the Great Lakes, this would be it, end quote. The social impacts of a rupture to Line 5 in the Straits of Mackinac are also severe. There would be risks to the safety of drinking water, as well as public health and especially Indigenous rights. In fact, some argue that the very existence of this pipeline goes against treaty rights and it should be removed. At the very least, an oil spill would hinder Indigenous treaty-asserted rights to fish in these waters. As a solution to this problem, Enbridge has proposed burying the pipeline in a tunnel under the Straits of Mackinac. However, experts have already expressed concerns about this tunnel and its potential to explode, as well as its lack of accounting for anchor strikes. Indigenous nations are also expressing concern over the man camps that would inevitably form during construction, putting Indigenous women, Two-Spirit, transgender, and other vulnerable people at risk. This also threatens Indigenous sovereignty, and it views the water as a commodity or a barrier rather than an important being in creation. In terms of rights holders and stakeholders, rights holders are the Indigenous nations of this region. Many Indigenous communities are affected by this pipeline and the potential tunnel project, but I'm going to focus on the Bay Mills Indian community, who are members of the Anishinaabe Nation. Bay Mills considers this project to be a danger to treaty fishing rights, cultures, and traditions of the Anishinaabe. It is posing a risk of killing the heart of Turtle Island. In addition, every tribal nation in Michigan opposes this tunnel project, and they collectively sent a letter to the president in 2024 ordering it to be shut down. In addition to Indigenous rights holders, there are many stakeholders in this issue. The Michigan government, for example, revoked Line 5's permission to cross the straits in 2020 for public safety. Despite this, the pipeline continues to be operating, violating the public safety order and trespassing. They were also found to be trespassing on the Bad River Band Reservation. As for the Trump administration, they plan to fast-track this tunnel due to the supposed current national energy emergency. The Trump administration plans are dependent on the Army Corps of Engineers, who are still drafting their final decision, but just this month released another possibility of horizontal drilling rather than the tunnel.
In terms of accountability, the party responsible for the spill can be held accountable for the economic damages, lost wages and profits, losses to natural resources, and cost of restoration. However, this is complicated through the fact that Enbridge signed the pledge of 2018 through a subsidiary of the company, meaning that they could get out of these legal obligations, leaving the burden of cost to fall on the state of Michigan and its taxpayers. To address this issue, the director of the Department of Natural Resources requested that Enbridge enter into an agreement that would hold them financially accountable for $1.8 billion in damages. Although this agreement would ensure Enbridge's financial accountability, this model leaves out accountability to the land and waters themselves. These actions taken to keep the pipeline running have violated the rights of the 1836 Treaty due to lack of consultation with Indigenous communities. By letting the pipeline continue to run and going ahead with the proposed tunnel, the rights of the signatories of the 1836 Treaty, in terms of rights to sustain their traditional ways of life, are being violated. Debates around the Line 5 pipeline have been ongoing for multiple years, with the tension of this issue first being raised in 2018 with its hit by an anchor. As these concerns were being raised, the governor of Michigan ordered for a cease in pipeline operations following Enbridge's refusal to provide documents detailing the safety of the pipeline. Following this demand, Enbridge continued to operate, stating that the government didn't have authority to threaten a shutdown. Since then, Enbridge and the state of Michigan, as well as multiple First Nation communities acting as interveners, have been involved in a series of legal disputes around the pipeline. In 2024, the Michigan Public Services Commission approved the permit for the tunnel. The most recent of these updates saw Trump, citing a national energy emergency, issue orders to speed up the permitting process on energy infrastructure projects, one of these being the Line 5 pipeline. First Nations are still fighting against the pipeline, with the Bay Mills Indian community, among others, asking for the appeal of the permit by the Michigan Public Services Commission. In terms of jurisdictional responsibility, most of the responsibility falls on the state of Michigan as well as the federal government. In this case, Michigan has been the most active in attempting to stop the pipeline. A study released in 2016 stated that they had multiple routes available to stop the pipeline, the most plausible of these being the transfer of jurisdiction from the Pipeline Hazardous Materials Administration over to the state. The other main actor in contesting the pipeline is Bay Mills Indian community, acting as an intervener and being represented by the Native Americans Rights Fund and Earth Justice. As the pipeline is on American land, Canada doesn't have any recourse for legal action against the pipeline, though they have a historic treaty that allows for the unimpeded flow of oil between the states and Canada. The challenges that Aaron and I faced when conducting research and gathering information about the pipeline was that there was little literature about accountability and jurisdictional power. A lot of the literature was news articles that didn't really delve into the complexities of the issue. And additionally, the complicated jurisdictional and legal proceedings were difficult to understand, especially as there were limited articles, and the articles were news articles. And also, Aaron and I don't have a background in jurisdiction or legal things, so that was difficult to address. Also, there was a lack of sources on the importance of the Great Lakes, as well as what's at risk ecologically. There was a lot of issues of why it's bad, but not really an in-depth understanding of the importance of the Great Lakes and its importance ecologically or in terms of First Nation perspectives.